Welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. I'm going to be talking a little bit today about the recovery journey. I do a lot of videos talking about recovery journey because often what happens is people concentrate on the topics that are involved with OCD, and that is absolutely needed. And I do a lot of that on here myself, breaking those all down, what those are. But the actual journey, the struggles involved in the journey needs so much attention. The reason for that being is because it's a very difficult process when you're walking it alone. And so I wanted to come in here and talk a little bit about what's involved in that process, why that's so challenging, and why people feel so lost and alone in that, and sort of the bits along the path that feel challenging. And I was going to talk about some different sections that don't always get sort of covered in, I think, the right light. And so I'm going to start with talking about medication. So over the years of working with people with meds, the thing that's really not understood when it comes to meds is that people, what they do is what happens is people tend to take very black and white views on everything in life. So if they're going to take black and white views on everything in life, realistically, they're going to take black and white views on meds too. So when it comes to medication, what tends to happen is people take the view that either meds work for someone, meds don't work for someone. They take the view that to get to recovery, you need to not be on meds. They take the view that meds is a weakness, now here's the key point, even if they say they don't see it as a weakness. Now, this is what happens. The stigma is sort of so ingrained in society in relation to meds that even when people speak out on the stigma against meds, they still, at the same time, hold the stigma to some degree themselves. It's very easy to do that. So you can always see how ingrained this is by, if you look at people who are really pro breaking stigmas and not being that meds isn't a stigma and so on. When it actually comes to them taking meds themselves, they usually find that they find it challenging, they find it difficult to take meds. They find it difficult because they think, I shouldn't be doing this at this point. I should be over this by now. I shouldn't do this. This is taking a step backwards. What if people think that this of me? People still hold them because it's so easy to do that, because you've had it for so long. For so long, you've been in this position where medication has seemed like the sort of has had this. It's in your mind, everyone has sort of had this this view that medication is some kind of weakness, some kind of bad thing, some kind of step back. And you really have to think about it. You really have to look at it. You really need to ask yourself, do I think that? Am I believing that on some level? Because chances are you are. You are on some level believing that. And I know how difficult that is for people, because over the years, I can't tell you how difficult it has been over the years to get people to go and see the doctor to take meds. It's been very difficult. People have not wanted to do it. Even people that were, such strong physical anxiety, unable to sleep, waking up all through the night, just really struggling. I've literally had to say, this isn't weakness. You can go in there. You can try it for 4 to 5 weeks and see how it works for you. You can change different meds. People come to me on meds that have been in the military, that are in the police SWAT teams, in all the toughest jobs. It doesn't have anything to do with strength. And then only then do they venture into the doctors. And they go and see the doctor, and they go and speak to the doctor. And only at that point, then 2 to 3 weeks, I think, God, they haven't been calling much lately, because the meds have started kicking in. I think, they're doing a lot better. I can see that. And then when you speak to them, they'll say, I think that maybe the meds, but it's predominantly the sort of rational thinking I've learned that's got into it. Well, yes, it helps adopt that a lot better, 100%. But the meds are playing a significant part, but you can't see what it's doing to your brain right then and there. That is a key point. Because you can't see what it's doing to your brain then and there, It's easy to think, oh, but it's not doing anything. I think they're not doing anything. If you came off them, you'd realise that, okay? So it's not so simplistic, okay? It's easy to think all these things against meds, view them as weakness. Who gives a damn who's on meds, who's not on meds? Whether someone's doing well, someone's doing not. It's not a bloody competition. People think it is. People think it's like a medal. I did it. I did it without meds. I did it without meds. I did do it without meds. Who gives a damn? Who gives a damn? If you feel better, that's all that matters in life. No one gives a competition. How good are you feeling today? People without meds. Excuse me. Can I just ask you, whilst you're having breakfast, how good are you feeling today? You feeling happy? Okay, that's good. What about you? Are you happier than him? And what about you? Are you happier than that person? Who cares? It's absolutely ridiculous way of measuring things. Load of crap. And we've built that up and we've done that for so long. And it's part of this whole culture of this sort of, if you just go on social media now, everyone's a speaker on some kind of success and motivation. It's not a competition life. You've got to enjoy it as well. You've got to enjoy the life. You've got to go through it day to day. Even if you don't enjoy it, this is another point as well. People are so obsessed with getting rid of anxiety. I couldn't give a damn if I had 30% of anxiety now and someone came along and they said, right, you've got 30% anxiety the rest of your life. There's nothing you can do, locked on. So what? I can still watch films. I can still see a family. I can still go on holiday. I can still do all that. I lived with 90% anxiety. It wouldn't be ideal. Preferably, I wouldn't want that. But it's not like you imagine it to be. These are key points when it comes to all this stuff. We're living in this world at the moment that's completely bonkers, with everybody on Instagram trying to outdo the next person and show something off that they've borrowed against all their money and all this success, sleep 4 hours, sleep 5 hours. If you want to live that life and you feel alive by it, by all means, yes, but not everyone wants to live that life. And if you are involved in trying to get better, that's good. And if you're trying to be successful in one area or another, that's great. But it doesn't make you a better person. That's where the conditional acceptance goes wrong. And people it's all conditional. They accept themselves when they're successful. They don't accept themselves when they're doing bad. They feel worse when they see someone doing better. Disaster. So we have to get those points right, okay? Because otherwise, what happens is it's so easy to get stuck with all this meds nonsense where people are competing with each other on, I'm on a lower dose and I'm on this dose. Who cares? Whatever meds you take, you wouldn't get that in other diseases. You wouldn't have another disease where somebody says, I'm on less than you of this medication and that. It just is what it is. The problem with OCD and the problem with mental health is this, to sum this up. Because there is an element of our intervention with the disorder in terms of we change our thinking, which then reduces the impact of the disorder, we believe it's all down to us. So it doesn't work like that. There's obviously some kind of genetic component. All right, then I'll get all the messages, oh no, you can cure yourself of OCD, there's no genetic component. There's no guarantee there's a genetic component. But I would bet every pound that I have that there is a mechanism, a combination of genes. Recovery, yes. You won't notice it fully recovered. You won't be able to notice it like I can't notice it now. But the problem is what you've got is people wanting to do not deny things about any illnesses. We see this with cancer all the time. You could go online now and type in juice diets for cancer. There'll be whole forums, groups, Reddits, all for people talking about cancer, juice diets to get rid of it. Same crap that you hear in OCD. We had that last week, someone talking about celery juice, rubbish for OCD, complete nonsense, never works. I've never met anyone in my life that's recovered from a celery juice. If it did work, we would have a celery juice recovery.com and I would be preaching it all day long. It's obviously nonsense. Unfortunately, the human brain and humans as a society, we like to believe easy paths, easy routes. I could very much write a book that was all simplistic and said things like lots of things just about like really oversimplifying OCD, making it all extra comfortable, and people would buy the book and think it was great until then the people who didn't think it worked then felt alone and thought to themselves, I'm the one-off that didn't get better. That is why that stuff doesn't work. Those things like celery juice and all that nonsense, for some people who believe in it, might get some kind of effect from, if they've got light OCD, where they feel a little bit better. Those kind of self-help books that are very much all about think positive and believe the universe will give you everything you want. There's going to obviously be a certain number of people that are going to believe that and feel better, so it will get a certain number of good reviews, where the majority that it doesn't work for don't speak out or say anything. So that's a load of rubbish. You can't, in OCD recovery, we have to mention what doesn't work and what does. The reason that obviously I'm quite passionate about saying what does and what doesn't is because I was stuck for many years. I completely accept that. I completely accept being stuck for that. It's not exactly so bad, the fact that I'm living at a time where there's a way out of it. But I'm saying that what we need to be careful is we need to highlight what works and what doesn't. And when we highlight what works and what doesn't, we have to provide evidence for why it does work. And we can see the evidence for things like with fears of, say, for example, if you have a fear of HIV, we can see that somebody else doesn't have a fear of HIV and they're not scared of it for whatever reason. So we can see that works. And we can see the evidence, and we can see they calmed down and became more accepting of the thing that they were scared of. Now, when it comes to celery juices and universes and all of this stuff, obviously, we can find those people who believe that the universe will cure their OCD overnight and stuff like that, of course. But in the mass majority, if that was the case, we would see faith healers in hospitals. We don't, for that reason. And the other part of that is that you've got a situation where with those celery juice things, we're living at a time where juicing is huge on social media. Social media doesn't represent the whole of society. Most human beings aren't the representation you're seeing on social media. It's the same as in the media when we see things that are really controversial articles that get us angry or whatever. Most people aren't in those small groups that have very extreme views. They're not. Most people are thinking things through and thinking, hold on, celery juice doesn't sound like that works, sounds a bit ridiculous to me, but they're not preaching it online. So often we can think, it can often get more attention because of how things are preached on social media. Obviously, with juices, you have a lot of celebrity diets and stuff, all talking about juicing and stuff like that all the time. And so that's why that can get attention. And people can think, oh, God, maybe juice does work. All these people are juicing and they say it's changed their life, or they've changed their diet and it's changed. Look, if there was a diet or there was a juice that worked for OCD, we would have definitely seen it time and time again, and we would have definitely reviewed it, and I would definitely have done it. Or not necessarily, if it was some modern diet that had come out, I wouldn't have necessarily done it, but someone would have, and we would have looked at it and we'd have seen it. There's never been any evidences for juices or anything like that. And even the same with diets. You can go on countless podcasts where people will say, I became vegan and my OCD, my anxiety, all my mental health problems solved. Okay. In certain instances where it's relating to the gut, problems in the gut and different things like that, in certain instances, yes, this could be a contributing factor. It's obviously not healthy to just sit eating chocolate all the time, and it's going to give you loads of short-term rush feelings from the sugar. Now, that doesn't for 1 second highlight that there is a diet that's going to fix OCD, even though there are countless places I can look online, and I even see people going to go in the OCD community still talking about it in some forums and stuff like that, where it catches on, and then people believe it. Forget diets. I have to say it and highlight it. The goal is to eat healthy lifestyle. Okay, healthy lifestyle through your life in terms of healthy eating and a healthy amount of exercise in terms of regular exercise. Helps boost your mood, healthy diet, better for your health. That combination is obviously the way we go. It's like anything. Years ago, I used to own a gym in London, and I used to write in men's health, men's fitness magazines. And when I used to write in there, it was always the same things. It was about writing about being realistic, healthy balance, not all the fads that were out. And that's exactly the same for OCD. People want to chase that because they're in a feeling of really feeling bad, and in that moment they want anything to work. So they're susceptible to ridiculous scenarios that can be posted in forums. 2 or 3 people can come out and say that worked for them, then it catches on, then they believe it, and it becomes a nightmare. So we want to highlight those things in terms of that journey, so that you can see what works. Healthy eating, regular exercise, great, but just be weary with a lot of this stuff. Okay. Same goes for things that are break free from being stuck in anxiety in 5 days, or a 6-day course, or all these kinds of things. We've done lots of videos talking about that and why that doesn't work. And I tried many of those things when I was stuck. Many of those things I did. Ridiculous ebooks. Ebook that just basically told yourself to distract yourself all day and you'll get better. Absolute rubbish. Spent a year trying to distract myself all day long, and didn't get me anywhere. Well, actually, we had some healthy benefits. This is the founder of CBT, one of the founders of CBT, Aaron Beck, talks about distraction. There's a good video on YouTube of him talking about that, the benefits in the short term for anxiety sufferers, in terms of they feel better when they get that short-term relief from distraction, but by no means long-term. So it has its benefits, but the phrase that I use is bringing it for the ride, so that it's less of a trying to escape from it, more of trying to bring it along. And that's key in the journey. Now, back to what I was talking about, because I've gone a little bit off topic. I wanted to talk about the medication and things with medication and other parts of the recovery journey. So it's not a competition, it's not a race, it's not a battle, none of that stuff. We're all trying to get better and have as much fun as we can in the recovery process. The recovery process doesn't have to be this sort of long, drawn-out struggle that's just a negativity in your life. We want to make it fun. That's what all the WhatsApp groups that I run, I've made it like that, because the OCD journey is so lonely. People are go to get help for years from one place to the next, feeling like nobody understands, they're completely alone, the family doesn't understand, friends don't understand. So when they come into me, they're feeling like, oh God, I've been through so much shit, something's got to work now. I need help, Rob. I watch your stuff and I can see what you're talking about, and it really makes sense to me. And I can see all through the stuff that Albert Ellis and founded CBT and all his work, and I've read the books and the reading list, and I can see all of that makes sense to me and how that works and everything. But I'm finding it difficult. That's because OCD recovery is not so super easy. It's going to take a little while. And so you want to have fun in those groups and not feel alone. And having other people that are going through the same thing as you, it makes a huge difference, because you realize, this everyone goes through this. It's not, you're not weak. You're not the somebody who just can't get it, because that's how it feels at times. You feel like, oh, it's just me. I'm the only person who can't get this recovery thing. Oh, it looks like, because it's easy to look at. Look, if I watch, it's one of the sports I like to watch on TV is the boxing. If I watch the boxing, I could easily watch them and think, God, that's so easy how they do that. Like any sport, when you watch it, you can think, oh, that's so easy. But why can't I do it like that? Well, because their brain is firing up all those muscles and knows all of those things habitually. So it knows every single part of what's going on over and over and over and over in every single way, little by little, putting those pieces, piece by piece by piece together. And so it's just like us brushing our teeth. So with what I'm doing when I'm talking about it, obviously I've been doing it for a long time, so it can feel like that in the way I say it, but it's not like that in reality. I didn't recover easily. It took a lot of reading. It took a lot of exposures. It took various shame attacking exercises. It took lots of disputing irrational beliefs. It took lots of reviewing life and looking at it philosophically and looking at how my thinking was. It took a lot of looking at all the sensation of anxiety and learning to get comfortable with it and learning to live with that. And that was a long path that was all coming together. I mean, I'm often envious of the guys that are in the groups that we ran, in terms of, because I was obviously on my own with it, and I felt very much alone for that journey. And so when I look at that, and with the WhatsApp groups and all the people, of course I met people with OCD along the way, and I did go to OCD group myself in the past, but it doesn't, when you haven't got those sort of you build strong bonds with people with OCD, because there's both of you have been through suffering, so you can relate on quite a deep level, and because everyone's been alone as well, it's quite a bonding. And so what tends to happen is that, because OCD is a disorder that different disorders are different. If you had a common injury and you went to a physiotherapy centre, chance that you're going to see somebody with the same injury as you is not necessarily, is unlikely. If you're going to a big physiotherapy centre and they've got a lot of physios in there, the chance that you're going to see someone in there with the same injury as you as that day, not that likely. Maybe not that likely. Chance that they've got them on the books is huge. I mean, because they're going to obviously be loads of common injuries. When you talk about OCD, you talk about much smaller number of people. I know they'll say, oh, 1 in 100 people have OCD. It's not a reality fact. That's or whatever statistic they say. Don't quote me on that. Those facts are based on, a lot of those are skewed. Okay. The problem is this, and this is a key point. We like to, when it comes to writing things in the media and articles about OCD, obviously, we as an OCD community, we call out the things that that when people are talking about the sort of being extra tidy, which isn't OCD, that people mistake as OCD. So we call out that and say that's not OCD. But then at the same time, what happens often in the OCD community is we're claiming these celebrities that have OCD, like saying, oh, Leonardo DiCaprio has OCD, David Beckham has OCD. I would very much doubt either of those have OCD like we have. Zilch. Because that, again, is the mistake of how it's been seen. Now, that will be the same with that statistic of how many people have OCD, because it would be so easy to do that and think, oh, God, there's a lot. It's the same as if you read a statistic of how many people are blind. If we look at that, well, there's obviously a lot of people that would be registered with sight problems, which then would cross a threshold. Don't quote me on this because I'm not an expert on eye diseases, but I imagine there's a threshold of what's considered legally blind. Now, actually being blind and walking down the street with a stick, unable to see anything more or less, is a very different thing. And the problem with that is then obviously those statistics, people think, oh God, loads of people have this. All right, yes, OCD is a lot more common than we think, but it's not as common as that when it's in this chronic, severe form where it's really latched on. And that can also sort of downplay what OCD is like. The same as the phrase just anxiety downplays anxiety. Anxiety feels bloody horrible, right, when it's really locked on. So when you say it's just anxiety, it's like saying, oh, you're just having a heart attack. It's not like that. The only reason that phrase comes into play is because the just is implying that it's just anxiety. It's in like, it's not the thing you fear. It will calm down once you calm down. Right. But it of itself is an anxiety disorder that feels very, very a big struggle. So we can't downplay that. So there's quite a lot of areas there that need looking into and making change with, because what's happened is, in one sense, we want a lot of people to understand there's this amount of people with OCD. And then in the second, it's taking claim of people that have just these quirks. They haven't got OCD. If David Beckham had the crippling level of OCD that we experience, he wouldn't be playing football at that level and doing all the speeches and all the things that he does. He'd be cancelling lots of those. It wouldn't be possible. You look at the likes of Howard Hughes, who was the aviation tycoon who was covered in the film The Aviator by Martin Scorsese and played by DiCaprio. That film, you can see crippling OCD, completely locked into in his house, unable to go out, caught in the rituals all the time. It's the same as when people talk about Winston Churchill. I'm a big fan of Winston Churchill, and I was at the Churchill War Rooms probably about 2-3 years ago, and I was reading a letter by Churchill talking about his depression, his anxiety, and things like, and he used to say, you know, he didn't used to stand too close to the train in case that he jumped in front, and things like that. And then he used to drink to get out of the feeling he felt of the depression and so on. And people used to say, well, Winston Churchill had bipolar. He definitely didn't have bipolar. If you've gone on any bipolar websites, they certainly they'll often highlight that if that's brought up. If Winston Churchill had bipolar, he wouldn't be functioning under those conditions. It wouldn't be possible. Maybe someone would say, yeah, well, maybe it was just an amazing case where it was possible. No. If you have bipolar and you're trying to hold the country in a war, in a really intense situation like that, even with alcohol, even with everything, it would be pretty much not possible. Okay, so That's not to say that people with bipolar don't get balanced out and able to achieve amazing things. They do. But we're talking about in that Winston Churchill situation, in the way that he lived, with all the drinking and all the intense work with no sort of breaks, and discharging himself from hospital after having a heart attack and climbing out the bed at that age, and getting back into the war and stuff. I mean, it's a ridiculous scenario. So did he have depression? Yes, probably he had depression. Did he have a lot of anxiety? Yes. Did he have an anxiety disorder? Doubt that. Probably very intense anxiety from the way he was living. Was he an alcoholic? Most likely. Was alcoholism escape from depression and anxiety? Yes. Could he have had some sort of low-level type of depression that was lingering, or that built up at times in ways? Yeah, yes, possibly. Could he have had? Could he have experienced panic attacks, sort of tachycardia, sort of like anxiety symptoms? Yes. I can't say that for gospel, and I'm not trying to do so. I'm just trying to put out a range of possibilities that could be there. So when we look at these situations, we have to look and think, okay, what sort of evidence are we seeing there? What is actually the case? Okay, so you can do it with anything. With all the rational stuff we learn, it's skills for life. They're not skills just for anxiety and OCD. They're skills for your whole life. It changes how you see things, so you can make the best decisions to give you the best opportunities for the things that you want in life. Now, if we're looking at a situation where, let's look at OCD recovery, the journey. Let's go back to that. With medication. If it's going to give you a better chance so that you can work through things calmly, why not take that, considering the downside isn't usually that bad? Well, it's obviously a good opportunity in a lot of cases. Does that mean that I would suggest it to someone who's feeling pretty bad that thinks they can manage it? Absolutely, I wouldn't tell them to speak to their doctor. If you can manage it and you're okay and it's not you're able to do it, and it's sort of going up and down and you're feeling okay a lot of time, you don't need to. It's no pressure. It's a choice. It's a personal choice. It's like the choice, say the choice to get married or the choice to have a baby. It's a completely personal choice. But our societies have rigid black and white views on various choices that humans make. If a human decides to stay not married, for whatever reason they choose, and maybe a very good rational reason, society will say, weirdo, something strange, very odd, whatever. If they decide not to have children, maybe they are a scientist, they want to be in the lab a lot, doing a lot of research, that's their whole passion in life, and they realise that they haven't got time to raise a family, and to them, they're not personally rushing to do that. Will society say, very strange, very weird? No. Humans are different. People want different things. They tend to, if you look at the mass society, want a range of things because there's obviously strong emotions at play. So most people will tend, if you look at society as a whole, will want to have children, will want to have a long-term partner and so on. That doesn't mean all. And you've got to look at the elements that form that. Behind everyone's decision, whatever they do in life, there's always a reason for why they do it, okay? There's always a reason. Whether somebody commits a terrible crime, murder, and so on, there was a reason they did that. In that moment when they committed that murder, it felt like the right thing to do to them at that point in time. Everything is not black and white. Nothing is black and white like people think. Even in the case of a murder, to the person who does that, there is a huge number of things behind that build up to the position which they come to make that decision, through their environment, through their life, through their childhood, through their genes, through so many elements that come into play. Things aren't black and white like that. Now, let's talk about the sort of duration of time involved in the recovery journey. You've got to think of this as a process that you're learning, you're going to have fun with, you're going to learn lots of new things, and they're going to really empower your life and make your life better. Tricky, the word empower. I don't like how it's often used in sort of modern day success culture where everyone's just banging on about empower. I like to sort of say, well, it will really help your life and really move it, and it does give that feeling of empowerment as you overcome it. But I don't want us to be this sort of talking in these success kind of terms that are thrown away around all day long these days. So yes, you want to absolutely drive ahead, and work and learn these things and feel good from what you're learning as you learn them, and it does give you this feeling of overcoming it, which in itself makes you feel more alive and feel better as you're going along that. And that is key, because with the journey you felt so behind this sort of block wall. OCD is, if you saw my last video that was talking about how the mechanism of OCD works, you had a situation where OCD is this kind of like web that's all locked. It feels like that, with all the sort of anxiety cycles and stuff sort of meshing, and you'll sort of feel like you're inside and can't feel free. Because of that's how it feels. What you have happen is, because you can't get a release instantly and you feel that a lot, or it feels like a brick wall that's very high that you can't climb over, and then at times you can and times you can't, and it's got all that going on. So unless you understand OCD from the outside, people just see it as anxiety. They think, oh, well, can't he just leave it there and get on, or change his mind, or distract himself, or just forget about it? It doesn't work like that. You're very much sort of intertwined in that when you're struggling and you're feeling like that. And there's obviously lots of elements. There's the element of you need to be punished every second for the thought that you've had, or for the thing that you might do, or, OCD is always going to jack it up. Okay, is it just a thought? What if I want it? What if I like it? And it's going to do all that stuff. So you've got all that going on, and that can obviously be sort of it feels like being internally tortured. So I used to feel like I've got to torture myself in the head every second, not let myself off the hook with this anxiety every second for the rest of my life. It's trying to do that. Okay, so you need to be aware that that's the process, and that's what's happening, and that's why you're sort of caught in that, and what you feel like. That's very important to understand, because otherwise it's downplayed. People are sort of like, oh, can't you just move on? Oh, can't you just think of it as a thought, or just a bit of anxiety, sort of leave it there, observe it. You're not leaving it there, you're not observing it. It's obviously not as simple as that. If it was as simple as that, all right, people could make the mistake of not knowing that, but the likes of Howard Hughes and so on, they wouldn't. The likes of Howard Hughes wouldn't just be stuck as bad as he was from OCD if it was as simplistic as that just to recover from. So obviously isn't. What was the next thing I was going to say? So what I want you to think about with this journey is you are picking away at these layers, like peeling layers off an onion. You're picking away at these layers, and they will come off bit by bit by bit, and you'll feel bit by bit better as this goes along. But initially, it's going to feel very much sort of you're stuck in that web. But as you do, it gets easier and easier and easier. But it's obviously like a roller coaster. You'll get many good days followed by your worst days, and vice versa. And it sort of goes like that in the journey. And I think what really happens to a lot of people is they get very disheartened when they've felt good, and then they feel bad again, because it feels so, or not I think this happens, it does happen, and people then feel like they're right back at square one. They've had this setback and they're never ever going to get better, and they're just it feels like that. But there's no such thing as square one. Like, there's no square one in time. Me talking 2 seconds ago is a different position to life is constantly changing all the time, so we never go backwards, although it can feel like that in our mind. That never occurs. So there is no square one. You're learning all the time. You're learning new things. You're getting new ideas. You're processing the anxiety journey differently. There's so many different elements going on in this recovery journey. So think of it as a process where you're learning all these things. You're picking away all these things about OCD, and that is going to be the process that you're involved in. And just go along with it. Don't try and rush it. Don't try and force it. Just use it as a journey. The same as if you're learning a language, you wouldn't think all the time like, have I learnt it yet? Have I got it thoroughly in my head? Is it all fixed now? Is it done? You wouldn't do that. You would just sort of roll along with it. Have a look at this. This is a mug one of you sent me. Can you see this? It's all the words that I spell wrong on Instagram. It's very funny. I know. I tell you, I've got to sort my grammar out on there, and I've often put the words in wrong as an exposure, and I used to have a lot of problems with emails when I had OCD badly. I used to think, bloody hell, if I've done this email correctly, and I'd keep going back and spending hours getting it right, and if I've got it wrong, then they'll think this about me. So I do intentionally put in a lot of mistakes I make myself, but there are intentional ones that I leave in there. So yeah, that mug, very good, if you can see that. So thank you for that. So let's have a look at some questions that you've put in. Fam, I can't even sleep. Well, sleeping, once you're anxious in the day, it's often going to seep over into the night. The same as why you'll often get panic attacks in the night or nightmares. Because you're anxious in the day, the brain gets used to it. And then what happens is that cycle then goes on into the night. It's very common for panic attacks occurring in the night. That's a very common time for them to occur. Some people only get them in the night. And so it often happens like that. So as you bring your anxiety down in general, that will help with your sleep at night. If you're really having trouble sleeping and it's just making the cycle worse, obviously if you're more tired, then anxiety can feel worse the next day, or it can spike it up. So you want to look at first you want to watch our videos on the YouTube channel talking about sleep in general, and you want to look at you're bringing your anxiety down in general with all the stuff we talk about, so that as you do that, then it will come down. Because what's happening is if you're not sleeping, it just feels like another thing's been added to another weight added to your back. So looking at that to help change that will really help with things. Good to hear. Meds have definitely helped. Depersonalization question, we've got videos on the channel about that. Check those out. Just reading through your questions. OCD recovery is not easy, but it's really worth it. What other choice have you got? You know, that's the thing people often say. They say, oh, it's too difficult. It's just, what choice have you got? You've got to do it. That's it. It's like saying, oh, I hate my job. I hate having a job. Well, what choice have you got? You've got to have a job, because if you need, do you need money? Well, we need money. We need to live. So those things we haven't got a choice. We've got to go for it. We have to give it a shot. We are so lucky to live in this era where we've got this help and all of these tools and things that we're learning to get better. The past didn't have that. If you told somebody you had OCD in the past, they might have burnt you at the stake as a witch because you told them that you've got such and such thoughts. That happened. People were sent into asylums. They didn't even have the meds we had. They all became alcoholic or drug addict or something because there was nothing for them. You've only got to look at when SSRIs were invented, and when then before that when benzos were invented. And obviously there was a lot of addiction with benzos because they were overprescribing them then. I mean, they overprescribe them now. You only got to go and see how much they're overprescribed, especially in this period with COVID. There's been a massive amount of meds overprescribed. So you've got to think of how lucky you are to be living at this time. It's a really, really, really great time. I mean, drop the phone there. It's a really, really great time to have OCD. It's never great to have OCD, but if you're going to pick a time period in history, this would be a good time to have it. But then in the future, they'll probably think this is a crap time to have it, because I imagine in the future, and you can watch my video on the future treatment for OCD, they'll probably look back at this as maybe the same way we look back at the times in the past. So we can't say. A lot of those questions are to do with trying to work OCD out. Why does OCD do this? Why does OCD do that? We often think we need to go down this big path of working out everything about the brain. So we think, I need to know everything about how OCD operates. Yes, we need to improve our knowledge of OCD to a certain degree, learn more about it, but we don't need to be an expert of the brain. You don't need to know about the amygdala and all these parts. You often hear these words thrown around online because they have been over time, because it's been a way that a lot of people have described it, but you don't need to know all the intricacies of how the brain operates in relation to OCD. Meds will help take the edge off. They won't get rid of intrusive thoughts. They might reduce it a bit, but they won't get rid of them, because if I think of a vegetable and I think of carrot, well, I'll be able to do that on meds. You always be able to think to some degree, so it's gonna come through. I don't get any intrusive thoughts now, barely at all. If I can't tell any difference between if I had OCD or if I didn't in relation to intrusive thoughts. They're never prominent, they're never repetitive, they're never there. Maybe one every few weeks at standing at traffic lights or something. What if I jump or something, very subtly, not intrusive. So it's very, very different. And it's a key point to remember that, because when you're in it, you think, oh my God, how am I going to ever stop this? But one is you trying to stop it, that mechanism, learning to calm that down. And two is fear of it, and fear of the thing that you fear as well. All the combination that's creating this rampant sort of cycle, which feels like a machine in your head. Don't worry about all the types of OCD. Those are phrases that are coined in the community. There's just OCD. Okay, you don't need the name pure OCD. We don't need the name POCD, RSD, anything. We use it to describe that in the context of the community so people know what we're talking about, but there's just OCD. That's it. Otherwise, people feel disheartened. They're like, oh my God, I've got another bloody theme. Well, you've got another thought. Everyone's got a thought, so that's obviously going to happen. And then people think, oh my God, I've got another type of OCD. How unlucky I am. It's not that at all. Why does it matter what anyone thinks in relation to acceptance of others? It's what Albert Ellis used to talk about. Being rejected by others is sort of humans' main sort of fear and what creates the cycles of anxiety. That is, we cover a lot on the YouTube channel. Check out a lot of videos on that, and realizing that we do not need others' approval. We only need to approve of us. We don't need others to approve of us. I want to come off medication. Read the post that I did a couple of days ago talking about meds, the rush to come off the meds, the rush to go on meds, and all the problems with that process, and why we need to take a balanced approach gradually. I go into great detail on that. If an intrusive thought for a certain topic lasts longer than 6 months, does it mean it's true? You can't work that out. Oliver does a great video on this on our YouTube channel talking about why you can't work out if an OCD thought is real, and why we don't need to do that to recover. That's a key video for you to watch. How do you manage to work whilst battling OCD? Because I'm not battling OCD. I've recovered from OCD, so this it's not affecting me. What people don't realise is OCD is a disorder that when it's sort of activated in the cycle with fear and so on, then you feel it, and when it's off, you don't. Hence why you've gone periods usually where it's been off as well. And then you've thought, oh my God, what if I don't even have OCD? And then it comes in, oh my God, what if that thing was real? So it's going to do that, okay? Because you're so used to. When we're stuck with it, we think we're in that forever, and when we're out of it, we think we're out of it forever. And it feels like that because it feels so back to normal when we're not often. And then people say, oh, but I never feel back to normal. Yes, I understand that too. I had one thought sort of latch for 4 or 5 years, felt locked on 24/7 almost time, but it feels like that. When we're distracted, it doesn't, or it's just a little bit latched and so on. So there's lots of elements in this, and we try and cover it. Hence why this whole page is dedicated to OCD, and we do so many videos on it, because there's so much to say about OCD, because there's a lot involved with it. Usually when we're seeking help and we go and ask the doctor about OCD, what they often know about OCD you could write on one playing card, and And so, or if somebody knows is a specialist in OCD, often that's what you can write on 10 playing cards, because anyone can say I'm a specialist in OCD if they've worked a bit with OCD and so on. So it's a very, what I've always found is that people with OCD, they've got a good knowledge themselves already of OCD. They know when they're speaking to someone doesn't understand. They're being reassured over and over. They're being told the same information that they've read time and time again. There's no real change in the thing that they're hearing. So obviously OCD, like anything, if I went to look for someone who was a specialist in hands, because I had a hand injury, there'd be a huge difference between someone who has written books on hands and whole life dedicated to hands over somebody who's doing the body in general. So you know, it's OCD. There's quite a lot that goes into it. Really is. You don't need to know all of that to recover for your own journey. Absolutely not. But there's a lot more goes into it than people think. Guys, great to have you all here. I thought I'd do a bit of a longer Instagram live today. I'll be back on here doing some more longer Instagram lives. But yeah, let me know what you like. If you like more regular, shorter Instagram lives, or you want some longer ones now and again, and the different topics you want, message me, DM me here on Instagram. Let me know what you want, and I will try and accommodate all of that and get those going on here. Guys, great to see you all. Wishing you all the best in the next week with your journey with recovery, and I will see you on the next Instagram live. Take it easy, guys.